I'm still a Republican because I was here first.
Yeah.
I don't know who the hell all these other people are. I don't know. I don't know what happened to the people I came to the party with.
Yeah.
They got a hold of some bad juju, something. I don't know. There was something in the back room they smoked, and they've been stupid ever since. I don't get it.
Welcome to At Our Table. I'm your host, Jamie Harrison. Y'all, I'm so excited to have Michael Steele joining us at the table today. Former Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, former Maryland Republican State Party Chair, former RNC Chair, and now a very popular host at MSNBC. Michael and I have been friends for years, and I'm usually on his show, so it will be fun to flip the script. Michael and I have had pretty similar careers, but we landed on opposite ends of the political spectrum. I'm really, really looking forward to this discussion. Folks, please welcome my big brother in politics, brother from another political mother.
There you go.
Former RNC Chair, Michael Steele. Michael, brother, it is so good to see you, man.
Chairman,
it is so
a
good
real
to
treat.
have you on.
No, it's a real treat. Congratulations on the podcast. Congratulations on your service to the party and the country. And look, dude, I'm just happy people still recognize the name. You know, they pull me off the ash heap of history and have a conversation. I love it.
Well, you know, Michael, as I was preparing for this interview with you, the more I read about your background, the more I was like, man, did I just look at this man's life and try to carbon copy what he did? I mean, there's so many similarities. And the first one is, I got to ask you the universal question that we ask anybody who has any tie to South Carolina. Who are your people?
Well,
you got links to South Carolina.
I've got very strong links to South Carolina. South Carolina was my second home. Growing up, my mama was born in St. Matthews, raised in Orangeburg, family in Columbia. We are, the Wally clan, and it was just good growing up, spending summers on my great aunt's farm. You haven't lived until you've got to collect eggs at 6 o'clock in the morning, from the chicken coop. I'm like, okay, chickens, can we do this at 10? Didn't you get the memo? There's no work before 10 a.m. on the farm, and that was just not happening.
Michael,
good,
did they have you pick butter beans or at least snap a few peas and all that?
Lord have mercy. I swear, snapping those damn beans, My favorite moment was when we decided we were going to have this big family barbecue. So my uncle went out and dug a big hole in the ground. I had no idea what he was doing at the time. He dug this big hole, then put all these charcoals in it, lit this fire, and let them burn. Meanwhile, we all get in the truck. My dad, my great uncle, my cousin, myself, and a couple other brothers. I mean, there was 6 guys going in this truck. I don't know how we all fit in this truck, but we got in the truck. Went over to a farm, picked up this big behind hog. I mean, this thing was massive. We get back to the farm with this thing. I'm thinking he got another pet. What do I know? Next thing I know, all the men are standing around. I'm standing with my uncle. He takes out this knife, slits this hog's throat, takes a knife, puts it down into the heart. He said, "You got to do that because you don't want it to bleed into the meat." I'm like, "You just killed a hog!" I'm a kid from the city trying to figure it out, but it gets better, Jamie. So they get the hog, they prepare the hog, they lay the hog in the pit, they cover it up. We're cooking the hog. So all of this is happening early in the morning. Then my uncle decides we're having some chicken. He goes out into the yard and grabs a couple of chickens, and he says, you want to do it? I said, do what? He said, you got to wring the neck. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? Oh man! Next thing you know, he takes his chicken, he whips his chicken around, one chicken around, he just whips it around. The other one, he just chopped the head off, threw the body in the yard. The chicken's. I understood for the first time running around with the chicken with his head cut off.
Exactly right.
I actually saw that ish. I saw it, and I was like, "Oh Lord, have mercy! Take me back to the city, please. I want to go home." But it was such fun growing up in South Carolina, man. Beautiful people. Beautiful community, great history for, with the family and everything. We were a sharecropper family there. And but when I found out you were from the neighborhood, I was like, okay, this is a brother I can ID with.
Well, Michael, one of the things we got to do, particularly as we move into 2028 and all these things, we got to have your show come down and you and I do something at South Carolina State University or Claflin in Orangeburg.
Yep.
And that way you can get some of your family to come. I mean, and I get my family come in Orangeburg and we can go to some barbecue place.
I love it. In fact, my aunt's farm was not far from South Carolina State University. Wow. So we were, back in the day, a lot of that area was still very rural, if you will.
Rural,
And the university was there. I remember it like it was yesterday. Yeah. So I would love to do that. I would love to do that. And there'll be a lot to talk about. I mean, I think there are a lot of good things that can happen over the course of the next year. A lot of good things that need to happen. So I'd love to do it right there in South Carolina, baby, because it's going to be a hot spot. There's no doubt about that.
It really is going to be. And, Michael, to be quite honest, this is part of the reason, your connection. People just don't understand. And I think Joe Biden got this when he decided to make South Carolina the first in the nation primary. I read this thing in the National Geographic, and they said that 90% of black folks in this country can trace at least one ancestor back to South Carolina.
Sure.
And that's because 40% of enslaved people came through the port of Charleston. And so many of our ancestors came through the state, and many of us, even if you don't live in the state, you got relatives or family that they're still in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And it's that connection is the glue in the black community. And so when you think about it, the state in which our folks came enslaved, the state where hands picked cotton, becomes the very first state to pick presidents of the United States, right? I mean, that's a powerful arc and a powerful narrative. And I often tell people, Joe Biden wasn't worried about beating Marianne Williamson and RFK and all that other stuff. He knew he was going to beat them, right?
Right.
That's not the reason why he moved South Carolina. He moved the first in the nation status to South Carolina because he knew the importance of black voters in
Will the Dems keep it
in this country. That's the big question. I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that they do.
I think they should.
But I think at least one cycle that's an open cycle, they should keep it. I actually think it might not be a bad thing to rotate it after a while. I just don't think it should be something that one state has for perpetuity. I really don't think so.
When I was chairman, I was charged, though our system is set up a little different from yours. You can act proactively during the cycle. We have to be charged as chairman by the convention prior to your chairmanship. In other words, I couldn't look at our primary or tinkering with our system unless I was given permission by the prior convention to do so. So the 2008 convention said that the chairman, the next chairman, and his or her team should look at the 2012 convention to see what improvements should be made. So they didn't expect a brother to be in charge. That was the last thing they had on their mind, that my black behind was going to wind up running everything. And so, of course, I'm very much of the mind, okay, let's shake it up. So I proposed, I said, so why don't we have to start in Iowa? in New Hampshire. I said, why? Why are we starting in the whitest state in the union? It is not reflective of the country. B, I mean, New Hampshire is cool, but again, I mean, it's not. Can we? And to your point, I said, why don't we mix that? Well, Lord have mercy, Iowa and New Hampshire. You thought I was saying that we had to take away their state, their state status and put them, in territory status or whatever. They lost their minds. But the idea was to propose, and what we did, I did work out with in talking with Tim Kaine, who was then chairman of the Democratic Party. He and I had a great relationship. We did not have Arizona, so we had 3 states in the first. You guys had 4, and so I thought, well, let's at least balance it out so that we can run our primaries in these states in a way that we don't, one state, one party or the other doesn't have the added burden of you have an extra state to do within the first month or so. We don't. So we added the 4th state. So we went, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Arizona,
Nevada,
and Nevada. And so everyone agreed with that. So then, of course, Phil and myself said, well, why don't we have a primary where we just kind of rotate the first in the nation status? So instead of South Carolina, instead of Iowa, we can go to South Carolina. We can go to Michigan, or we can go. They didn't want it. But when I saw you do that, that's the thing to do. It infuses the system with long overdue energy. Yes. And I think it positions the voters in a way that they feel they have a little bit more control of the outcome. I always hated the fact that people said, well, he lost the Iowa caucus, therefore he's not going to become president. I was like, who the hell said that?
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's just too much weight for one state to and too much power for one state or 2 states to have. Yeah. And I think it needs to rotate because the country changes. The parties evolve. And so therefore the process by which we select our nominees should evolve as well. And but it's really hard. I often tell folks, I have a kid that's in 1st grade. And one of the things, and when he was in kindergarten, it was always the battle about who's going to be the line leader. And in essence, my analogy was, it was like New Hampshire basically says, well, I'm going to be the line leader every day for the entirety of the year. Well, you just can't do that. You got to share the love with some other folks. It just can't be about you. And I don't care if you said, well, my law says that. Well, your law is about you. That's not impacting everybody else.
That's it.
But
that's it.
But nonetheless, we'll have that debate over the course of the next.
Yes,
but I'm looking forward to it. But let's get back a little bit to you and your background. Again, there's so many similarities. You grew up in a single-parent household. You went to fancy pants undergrad like I did. After undergrad, you taught high school for a year. I taught 9th grade social studies, and
I was freshman world history and senior economics.
Wow. And then you ended up in law school at Georgetown. I went to Georgetown too. Yep. But there was something also interesting. You almost became a priest, right?
Yeah. So when I was teaching, in fact, I was in the Augustinian order at the time. I was stationed at Villanova University, where I was doing philosophy in first year of my what they call the pre-novitiate, before I get on that track towards vows. And so I was at Villanova, taught at Malvern Prep, and it was quite an interesting journey. It sort of grounded me in terms of my philosophy and helped me really kind of, in many respects, merge sort of the moral compass of my life to the sort of human compass, the things that I would do next, whatever that was. Had no idea, but I thought I'd be a priest. So my goal was obviously oriented towards serving others, and being faithful to the Gospels and doing what the gospel tells us to do, which is it's not complicated, Jamie, but it is the hardest thing for us. I mean, God gave us 10 commandments in the Old Testament, and we can't do those 10 things on a day in and day out. But we just can't. Jesus, his son, comes along and gives us the New Testament. He says, okay, let me simplify this for you. Okay. I know it's been hard to do the honor thy mother and father, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife and all that, thou shalt not kill, right? I'm going to make it real simple. Love each other. Because if you do that, those other 10 things become that much easier to do.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy. We love each other. Oh, what the hell I'm going to love him for? Right? So, but the call to service for me was a very, very important part of it. And I am particularly proud today in a very special way because our new Pope is an Augustinian.
Yeah.
And in fact, our ships kind of passed each other. He was in the Midwest province. I'm in the Eastern province. He's a little bit older than I am. But he, when he started his trek towards novitiate, taking vows and all of that, he went to Peru and went down that road. My thought at the time was I wanted to be a church diplomat. So for me, it was like, okay, I want to get to Rome and all of that. But God had another plan. And, here we are. But it is foundational, and it really affected everything I did, man. As lieutenant governor, as party chairman, as a husband, as father, it really reoriented my view of the world.
So how did you find in all of that, in all of this vast experience that you had, again, roots in South Carolina, you born in D.C., right?
Mm-hmm. I was actually born at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, but and put up for adoption after my birth. And my mom and her husband at that time, he died 4 years later after my adoption. They adopted me, and so that was that. And then my mom raised me alone until she remarried in the late 60s.
So where did the political awakening, there's a moment in which you say, my moment was, really two parts. First part was 88, Jesse Jackson at the Democratic Convention, when he was talking to young people about hope and really taking charge. And then my second moment was, I would say, for some generation, it was like Barack Obama was the guide.
Sure.
Other generations, for your generation, for you, it was Ronald Reagan. But for me, it was Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
So tell us about that political moment in which the light turned on for you that you said, okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. And, in one sense, the orientation could be readily identifiable. But in another, it's, you stop and you think about that journey a little bit more. Growing up in the nation's capital and growing up at the time that I did, I watched the Vietnam War unfold on my front porch. I watched the sexual revolution. I would go downtown. We would go into Georgetown, and there'd be women burning their broads and running around, topless. I'm like, what the hell is? And of course, as a 10-year-old boy, I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Meanwhile, my mom was like, okay, John, let's keep driving. Let's get the hell out of this part of town. So you had all these things culturally in my own church, in the Catholic Church. We had major upheavals when the Pope Saint John the 23rd threw open the church's doors and windows and said the world is invited in. And that changed a lot of, the orientation, moving from a more traditionalist view to a more, it's not, I don't want to put it in political terms because it's not, just sort of opening the church in its language and its expressions in a way. So all of these influences, Jamie, sort of shaped this kid. And I remember, my first election was 1976. I'm, looking to vote. I'm 17. I will be 18 that October. The election is that November. So I was eligible to vote. And I just remember thinking, okay, what do I do here? I mean, I had no real orientation, right? Mm-hmm. My mother said to me, she said, well, look, don't become a Democrat because we're Democrats. Don't become a Democrat because you live in a city of Democrats, which Washington, D.C. Was at the time, still is in large measure. She said, go out and figure it out for yourself. So I did. I went out and I read and studied a little bit about both parties. I, got my encyclopedia, looked up, the Republican Party. Yes, folks, there was this thing called encyclopedia. It was an actual book. I had to go get the book, go to the library, open the books up and start reading stuff. There was no computer I could go on as Google. So we did the research, and that the Republican convention in 76, you had Ronald Reagan running for presidency against Gerald Ford, who was dealing with all of Watergate, which again happened on our front porch. And what struck me about Reagan was how he talked about the country in losing his bid for the presidency. And it sounded, there were times where the things he said sounded like stuff my mother said to me. And in one sense, it made sense if you just look at it. They're both of that generation, so to speak, where Reagan was a Democrat at one point in his life, and he was a Roosevelt Democrat. My mom was a Roosevelt Democrat as well. So that language, even though he was a Republican, he still carried over some of that sense, that sort of World War II, Depression era kind of, vim and vigor, that sort of, we want to get things done. We're a strong nation. We're a strong people. And I appreciated that because when you stop and think about it, Jamie, and this is very true for both of us as Black men, and think about it even at the time when you were a young man sort of exploring all of this, the country was still dealing with, as young Black men, we still had to deal with being Black men in this country.
That's exactly right.
We didn't get a free walk to school or a free pass at the supermarket, or no looks or weird glances as we were walking down the street. That wasn't our experience in America. And my mother, at a time when I was raised in D.C., there were parts of D.C. my mother couldn't take me. She couldn't take me to every park in the city. She couldn't take me to every department store. There were still white-only water fountains across the city. And so, she raised me, despite all of that, to be inspired by a country in which she believed I had a role and a place. Mm-hmm. And so Reagan, in many respects, spoke to that. And I appreciated it. I really did. Yeah. And I was like, yeah. And so I looked and saw, hey, the Republicans, they're my political home. This is where Black Republicans, or Black men in particular, found their political voice, was given their political voice. And that made a lot of sense to me, and it connected. Well, little did I know.
Well, and I want to get into that because
what they appeared to be.
Well, but very, very quickly, you found your political voice, and then you became a darling of the Republican Party. You became a state party chair, right?
I was a county
Lieutenant.
chairman. I was one of the few chairmen in the country. It was a county chairman, state chairman, national chairman, and an elected official. So I knew how the party worked.
Yeah. So so talk a little bit about that in terms of the embrace. Were you embraced? Because you were, listen.
Not necessarily, no. Not in all quarters, no. No,
give us a little sense of some of the pushback that you got, because, you know, I look at folks like Tim Scott here in South Carolina. There's so few black folks, particularly a few years ago. I think the numbers have grown. But, you know, when the party shifts happened, it happened hard, particularly in the South. Like almost massively, all black folks went to the Democratic Party. Almost all white folks went over to the Republican Party, or a huge majority of them. I saw people like Tim Scott and some others here in South Carolina who, when they said that they were Republican, they shot up the ranks very, very quickly, because had they come through the Democratic side, there's so many black folks on the Democratic side that, you know, it would have taken them a moment to become this and to become that. So give us a little insight into your trajectory and how you were received by the party.
You know, I'm sort of an accidental politician. It's not what I really set out to be. Remember, you know, for me, the orientation was very, very different. I didn't seek politics for the purposes of becoming an elected official or being a party leader. In fact, I mean, so I grew up in D.C. The Republican Party in D.C. didn't really exist in any form or fashion. I mean, first off, you're not a state. Second of all, you don't have that infrastructure that you have in states, you know, in many respects. So it was a very different thing. Being, you know, a young black man looking, you know, to explore political opportunities, they were very, very few. The network, there was no net being cast out there to sort of grab someone like me and say, hey, we want you to be a part of this. So when I got married and moved to Maryland in the mid 80s, I decided, you know, after, trial and error of just kind of like sort of bebopping around. And I was more focused on national and international stuff. At that point, I was, you know, kind of getting my career together. You know, I was in law school and, you know, thinking about, okay, I'll start a law practice. And I wasn't thinking about politics. It was kind of neat. I mean, again, you know, at that point, Reagan had been, been elected once, so we'd gotten elected again in the second term. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is good. But I didn't want to be a part of that. There was nothing about me that said, oh, I want to be in the administration. I want an appointment. I wanted this. I want to. So
and was there any pushback from any of your friends saying, brother, why the hell are you a Ronald Reagan fan?
Yeah. Well, so the funny part was, so you remember I told you my mama said, oh, just don't be a Democrat because I'm very wealthy. Yeah. So I went out and I did all this discovery and I did all this reading my encyclopedias and talking to people and did all this stuff. And I come back and I tell my mother that I decided I was going to become a Republican. And she looked at me and she said, why the hell you want to do that? Because you told me to go out. And she said, boy, get out of here. I ain't got time for your silly. You're a damn Republican. What's wrong with you? I was like, what? You told me to go look at. So, yeah, I got a lot. High school was not pretty. College people thought, again, I went to Hopkins. So,
yep.
No, that was not a very welcoming thing. But I've always been an outlier in politics, Jamie. That's at the core of when I look at my political career, I call myself the accidental candidate, the accidental chairman, because they're positions I never really sought. So a friend of mine here in Prince George's County was like, hey, I'm going to a Central Committee meeting. Why don't you come? You can meet some people and maybe we get you involved in the party at the county level. I'm like, oh, okay. So I go to the Central Committee meeting. I'm sitting in the corner of the room. I'm watching this meeting, and I'm sitting here and these people don't have a damn clue what they're doing. But I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
As my wife would tell you, and my mother certainly would, I am not one that's why I never played poker. Because I don't have a poker face. I will let you know your stuff is kind of messed up right now, and you sound real stupid. And I'm
straight no chaser,
right? So I'm sitting in the corner room going, "Oh, what the?" And the chairwoman looks at me and she goes, "Excuse me, sir. We want to welcome you. What's your name?" I said, "Michael Steele." And my friend goes, "Oh, yes, Michael Steele. I brought you." And she said, "Well, you seem to have a look. When we were talking about this issue, well, do you have some thoughts on it?" I went, "Well, that didn't sound right. What y'all were talking about." Because of course they were talking about black voters. I was like,
yeah.
I don't know. I'm from DC, and no, that's just not how black people think. I think that's just the crazy way to approach that. So long story short, she was like, "Well, why don't you help us figure it out?" And I was like, okay. So I worked on this minority outreach thing, which is how I came to hate the term. Yeah. I worked on this minority outreach effort, and 2 years later, I'm chairman of the county party. I was like, okay. Because everyone was like, well, why don't you do it? And I'm like, all right, but if y'all know if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it a way that I don't play well. And I never have. I've never played well with others in politics, because politics is supposed to be disruptive. Not what Donald Trump is doing. That's destruction. That's not disruption. And it's supposed to disrupt the status quo. It's not supposed to settle into it. And it should always be changing and evolving, not devolving the way we see it now. And so that goes to the kind of leaders we select. But I've always been that guy, who's in the room and someone turns and go, well, what about him? Like, who? And they're like, you. I'm like, really? And that's how I became county chairman. It's how I became state chairman. It's how I became lieutenant governor. Running for the U.S. Senate, it's the same thing. And so for me, politics has always been sort of this accidental journey. But I'm like, okay, now that the accident has happened, meaning I'm involved, why don't we disrupt it? Why don't we change the way we do the game? And going back to the story about how I wanted to disrupt our primary process. When I was state party chairman, I opened our primary to independent voters because independents can't vote in Maryland. So I opened our primary to independent voters, got roundly criticized for it, right? And beat up for it. We did it. The party, I got resistance to want to put money into it. So it fell a little bit flat. Guess what they're trying to do now? Open up the primaries to independent voters. I'm like, I did that 30 years ago, people. What are you talking about?
Michael, I can so relate to that, man. Trying to change the culture of a political party is really one of the hardest things that you can do. And I experienced that full born because, man, I got my teeth kicked in every time I tried to make some modifications or changes because the White House didn't want that. Not the White House. Certain individuals at the White House did not want that to happen. I think had I talked to the president, he would have been all for it. Yeah. But there's certain gatekeepers who don't want certain things to happen. And, I hear things now, for instance, the whole talk about midterm conventions, right? That was my idea a few years ago. And I proposed to have a midterm convention in 2022 for the Democratic Party. I was told by the White House, no, we can't spend money on that. And now, Ken brought it up, which I actually recommend
money on that because the Republicans are going to do it, and you've got to have a counter program. You don't know how would that work? What does that look like in your view?
So in my eyesight, it was our convention, the DNC's convention is much larger than the Republicans. One, because we have thousands more delegates than you guys have, right? And so there are only certain states that we could actually do, or certain cities that we can actually do our convention, because we're too big to do it in some of the smaller markets. So my thought was, let's do it in some of these smaller markets, in some of the battleground states. And that, in essence, you'd have maybe 2 days of just almost like the CPAC style, just rallies, speeches. You can do some trainings as well, but just a mini, not the 4-day thing that we would normally do for a large convention, but sort of a mini convention where you highlight some of the biggest names in the Democratic Party, some of the most energizing folks, do some trainings for our candidates, trainings for our operatives on the ground, so that they have a game plan about what's a unified message moving forward, and also what are some tactics that we can utilize in order to turn the vote out. And so that's the thought and the sort of the structure that I had for that. We'll see if in the end that I think Donald Trump heard the scuttlebutt that Democrats were thinking about doing that. And, you know, of course, Trump wants more time that he can be in front of a camera. So that's a perfect thing for him. But my thought was you do it in, you know, a March or April. Highlight some of your biggest candidates running for governor, your biggest candidates running for U.S. Senate, some of the top House races. And again, with one big unified message. Doesn't have to be something that is really ideologically driven, right? But that is universally, that brings us together as a party.
You think it's going to happen?
I hope so. I'm going to talk to Ken more about it. He seemed very receptive to it. I think this would be not only a great way to build up some more attention and energy to some of the campaigns that we have, but frankly speaking, I think it's also a great way to raise a little more money for the midterms.
It's a good way to do that. Look, having worked with Democrats in 2 big presidential cycles, it is challenging, and I would send you messages every once in a while. Dude.
And I appreciate it. You're like, what the hell are y'all doing over there?
What the hell are y'all doing? And it's, the Democrats, for me, as far as America is concerned, I think they want to know, can you fight this? And it's not even so much fighting Trump, it's fighting for them.
For them.
When you see the deconstruction of our federal government, the blowing up of programs that have been there for folks internationally, USAID, and domestically, SNAP, for example, who's going to stop that? Who's going to help us deal with that? Because you and I both know on the other side of all of this, and we can get into whether or not, Donald Trump thinks he's going. I don't think Donald Trump plans to leave the White House, y'all. That's why he's abused the Oval Office the way he has. He wants to build this massive ballroom, which we don't need. This is an absolute waste of money. But it is Donald Trump slinging his private parts across the government to show that he can do it and no one will stop him.
And nobody. And that's why he's doing the redistricting, because he wants a rubber stamp house.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so when you have these things happening, the question becomes who stops him? The Congress is useless. The Republican leadership of the House, for example, is useless. They are the definition of useless. And because they're more concerned about Donald Trump's well-being than they are their own constituents.
Yes.
And certainly the country. So you take that off the table. You then have to look at, the Senate. Again, the Republicans control there. They're trying to mitigate and navigate, but again, wind up currying favor for Donald Trump. So the country's sitting there going, well, who's going to fight for us? Who's going to stop this? And I think that's a window that Democrats need to step through a threshold they have to cross, which is why Gavin Newsom, I think, has seen the kind of response that he's seen. I think in any other iteration, people would look at Gavin Newsom and yawn. But Gavin Newsom, in this iteration, has shown his capacity to go mano a mano, toe-to-toe with Trump. And people are responding to that. So it'll be very interesting with the concept, the idea of a mini convention, even though Trump proposed it, just like with redistricting. Republicans, if we're honest, and that's all we know how to be, the both of us, and that is they're scared to death. They don't like this redistricting approach.
No, they don't.
Because it creates stories and problems for them that they don't want to have to deal with. B, it's no guarantee that these newly created seats are going to be won by them, by their candidates, because they're going to be putting up cray-cray candidates.
That's exactly right.
These MAGA idiots who, want to take America back to 1860, right? And they're not going to win necessarily. They're not necessarily going to win. No matter how you draw the lines, you still have voters. You still have to make an impression on those voters. And then you ripple that out to places like California that with a governor who's prepared to play hardball, this could get a little bit gnarly. So there is that piece of this that, Donald Trump is beating his chest because Donald Trump doesn't really give a damn about the consequences of the things he does. But the party is concerned about those consequences. So Democrats could really, twist Republicans, underwear a little bit on both the redistricting and the mini convention.
Michael, I wholeheartedly agree. I just wrote a piece on Substack, and I know you just wrote a piece about this do-nothing Congress and how feckless they are. But I wrote a piece on Substack just recently about how 2026 could be an echo of 2006. Mm-hmm. Because in many ways, you see similar dynamics. After the 2004 race, Democrats, the obituaries were being written by the Democratic Party. As you remember, yep. Kerry lost. We lost all these Senate races. We didn't take the House back. And then 06 happened. Howard Dean invested in his 50-state strategy. Yep. You got Republican overreach. That's when George W. Bush tried to privatize Social Security. That's when the fatigue with the Iraq War. And then Democrats were unified. Nancy Pelosi had that House caucus unified. Yep. They were drumming that beat of a culture of corruption. We got to drain the swamp. That was the unifying message going into the 06 election. And we won the House and we won the Senate. We didn't think we were going to win the Senate that night, but we woke up the next morning and, there was a path that we took the Senate too. I think very similar dynamics can happen here. Investment in state party infrastructure, you and I agree, a 50-state strategy is important and necessary. Yep. Making sure we fan the flames of this Republican overreach, that big, beautiful, bastardized bill that was passed is a symbol of that. There's corruption. Donald Trump and his ilk have gotten billions of dollars.
We have redefined what corruption is.
Exactly. So we just need to make sure that, and I give Hakeem credit. I know a lot of people beat him up for stuff he can't control, but he has kept that House caucus unified on the next vote on raising the debt ceiling and passing whether the government shuts down. House Dems are going to be unified. I can't speak about what's going on in the Senate, but I know House Dems are going to be unified. So with all of that, all of the stars are aligning for 2026 to look like 06, but we got to take advantage of the opportunity.
Right. No, you do. And that's the problem and the challenge, I think, for Democrats, because you have such a broad constituency. It's a lot of the various coalitions from across the country that align with the party. Republicans don't have that. They basically have one coalition. And that's it. I mean, it is the two parties are very different in that vein. The Republicans talk about, they think they can throw a pair of gold lame sneakers in front of a young black kid and he's going to vote Republican. I mean, that's as simple as it is. And that does not translate into in an environment in which you're going to begin to feel the downward economic impact of tariffs, the downward economic impact of shuttering government agencies, the downward health impact of having RFK Jr. as the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Period.
Disastrous.
I can't say, when a man tells you he had brain worms, why the hell do you want to put him in charge of healthcare? I'm sorry. Thank you for the suggestion, but no.
Cut off the head of a whale, ran over a bear. Just all kinds. This man is crazy as hell.
If your brothers and your sisters tell your friends, I'm sorry, he a little cray-cray, y'all don't want to play with him, guess who I'm not playing with? Okay? So I don't understand. This is my problem with Republican senators who are sitting up there now beating their breast about what's happening, with vaccines in this country. And the fact that you've got this idiot Surgeon General, whatever the hell he is in Florida, saying, oh, we're just not going to vaccinate anybody. I'm telling y'all, get your kids out of Florida. Get out of the state of Florida because y'all going to be sick and y'all going to die. It's just like this, Jamie. My party is the party that told America don't wear a mask and 1 million people died during COVID because they listened to stupid people who wanted to politicize wearing a mask. Now, I'm sorry, I can equate a lot of things to my freedom, but I am not going to say that I am less free because I put a mask on during an epidemic.
Yes.
What the hell? What is brain worms, right? So
this is crazy, Michael.
It's crazy.
But so this is one of the questions that my mom wanted me to ask you. She said because she loves you and Simone. Absolutely love you and Simone. She said, now, why is Michael still a Republican? She's like, he's so good, but why is he still a Republican? And is he going to run for something?
Well, so the first question, I'm still a Republican because I was here first.
Yeah. I
don't know who the hell all these other people are. I don't know. I don't know what happened to the people I came to the party with. Yeah. They got a hold of some bad juju, something. I don't know. There was something in the back room they smoked, and they've been stupid ever since. I don't get it. But I was here first. I made the choice to join a party at a time when it was not particularly popular. It was certainly was not something that went over well in the Black community. I've always been caught between these worlds in which I'm not accepted in either necessarily. But it's a reason why I called myself a Lincoln Republican, because I never aligned myself to a personality in the party. I aligned myself to the idea on which the party was founded, which was the freedom, the liberties of every single person who falls under our Constitution. And I take to heart the words in that Constitution that says we're all equal. We're all free. We have inalienable rights that need to be protected. And so, I became a Republican when there was no pro-life plank. We didn't turn on the question of abortion. We didn't turn on culture wars. We talked about a country in which we stood with our allies, defended against our enemies, and found a way through public policy to allow every American to achieve their version of the American dream. We welcomed the immigrant. We stood for the men and women who wanted to raise their kids in a way that respected their family tradition, their culture, et cetera. So it's this sort of combination of, that that libertarian sort of, idea that you do you, boo. I'm do me. And, and together we watch each other's back, right? And so what the Republican Party is now is a cult of Donald Trump. He is, in my estimation, the worst infection any political party has ever experienced. What has been so disappointing is that good men and women of conscience have made a conscious choice not to inoculate themselves against this infection and have allowed it to grow and fester in a way in which the party is unrecognizable. The principles are what myself and others like me still try to hold up every day in some form or fashion. But the other political thing is, philosophically, I disagree with Democrats on some things. And so for me, I can't philosophically make that, now I'm going to be a Democrat. Well, that says more about me than it does the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. And some people can do that. I just could not make that turn. But I would love to come on your podcast and have big philosophical battles over public policy, and the approach to this or that problem. But that's not where the country is right now. The big battle is over, are we still Americans? What does that mean? Yeah. What does that look like? Do we welcome the immigrant? Do we protect each other? Do we have each other's back? And I'm afraid to say I don't think we do. I think this is the most selfish generation this country's seen. And I'm just glad that there's still fighters out there who want to fight for those things that matter, that wants to fight for the rule of law, the principle of accountability, and the nobility of public service, and not give in to the culture of one man.
Well, Michael, part of why I love talking to you all the time, and particularly when I was DNC chair, because that role, being the chair of a national party, is probably one of the loneliest roles, I think, in American politics. It really is. There are only a few people who will understand, and it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, right, but really will understand what you are going through and how hard it can be. When you were RNC chair, what was the loneliest moment? And it's hard to say because you were probably one of the most successful RNC chairs in history when you look at your end results. Like you look at the 2010 midterms under your chairmanship, how many seats you took in the House, how many seats you took in the Senate. I mean, it was nobody could say nothing but successful. But yet, you had naysayers and you had people coming after you, even though you were delivering. Give us a sense of your time as RNC chair and really what the loneliest moment for you or the most frustrating moment.
I think there were two. The first was around Christmas of 2009. So coming up on the first year anniversary, I was elected a week after Obama was inaugurated in 2009. So by the week between Christmas and New Year's of 2009 was probably the lowest point where I thought I would quit. And of course, knowing me, I was like, well, if I'm going to quit, I'm going to blow this ish up on my way out. I'm taking everybody with me. Everybody. I'm going to kick everybody's ass one time. I'm going to take my foot and extend it. And it was lonely because the things I wanted to, when I sat down with the leadership team of the RNC that I put together, I discovered by the end of that first year that not everybody was on my team, that everybody had other interests that they were fulfilling. It was not the interest of service to the party and ultimately service to the country to create a party that people would want to join. I remember telling folks, this will be the most fun you'll ever have in politics, because for the first time you'll get to do everything you've always wanted to do, but nobody wanted to pay for.
Yes.
I said, you give me a plan and it makes sense. It has viability. I will find the money. I will go out and I will raise the money for that effort. And I stayed true to that. And despite the success that we had that November in the election of Bob McDonnell as governor of Virginia and Chris Christie as governor of New Jersey, and the success that we had in raising money, despite that everyone was telling our donors to not give to the party because the black man don't know how to, handle money.
You don't know how to spend it. Yeah.
We don't know how to. We just spend money. I don't know what they thought I was spending it on, but and I just felt that at that point that they that it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
And so that was a lonely moment. And the second moment was the day they fired me. Because I looked around that room and I saw a lot of people I thought were friends, a lot of people who basically lied to me. Yeah. Starting with Reince Priebus.
Yeah.
Reince Priebus was my this term, my ace boo coup, right? My boy, Reince and I were tight. I didn't even know Reince. They brought Reince into my world when I ran for chairman. I didn't know who the hell the chairman of Wisconsin was. I'm not dealing with, but he was this guy that I really liked. I mean, he had this quirky voice and his excuse me, I don't want to say that. Just name. He was just, but he was a snake.
Yeah.
And that hurt. That was really, really lonely to find out that he was such a betrayer.
In that process, did you ever feel like listen, I know how talented you are, and most people who know you know how talented you are, but the way that they were positioning you, or the way they said, here's a counter to Barack Obama. Like, we need another black man to be a counter to the other black man elected. Like, how did you feel in that process?
Well, I had to remind them. I'm saying, like, y'all know I'm black. I can't go out and say this stuff. A, I don't believe it. B, I would never say it that way. Yep. I never bought into the whole thing that Trump started with Obama's birth certificate. And to this day, if the president were on this podcast with us, I would say to him, for me, as a black man, the lowest moment was the day he produced his birth certificate.
Yeah.
Because I would have told every last one of y'all, kiss my ass.
Hello.
I ain't giving you nothing.
Not a damn thing.
Not a damn thing. Now, when George Bush and Bill Clinton and Gerald Ford and every other president who was still alive at the time produced their birth certificates, I may put mine on top. But until then, kiss my ass. That would have been me. And that sort of gives you a sense of the kind of the problem I had inside the RNC, because that's how I would roll. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not doing that. And we're not doing that. And so that's why I said I did not play well with others, because I was mission driven. I was focused. I have a chance to redirect the course of the party, which is why, like I said, I got, I abhorred this term, of minority outreach. I'm like, what the hell is that? That's crackers at a party that nobody wants you at, right? What I talked about, let's build a coalition with communities of color. Let's build a coalition with women. Let's build a coalition with the gay and lesbian community, since we created log cabin Republicans in the 1960s. In the 1960s, Republicans acknowledged gay and lesbian citizens politically with the creation of log cabin Republicans. We forget so much of our own history as Republicans, and it was so galling to me. So for me, it was just a matter of reorienting the focus of the party to things that really mattered, and what really mattered were people. And so it was hard, man. It was really hard because a lot of people had agendas. There was a lot of grifting and money that I had to fight against. A lot of my problems is the fact that I just cut off the supply chain.
Yeah.
I just wasn't approving contracts that people on K Street wanted approved. So,
and did you have any backbiting from members of the Hill? Because who is it was McConnell over in the Senate.
McConnell was the minority leader, and John Boehner, John Boehner is one of the coolest dudes on the planet. I love John Boehner. I nicknamed John Boehner Dean Martin because that's what he was like. Yeah. He was like,
he really was.
He really was. You know, he's got the drink in one hand and the cigarette
in the other.
And he's looking at you going, what? What?
Listen, I didn't agree with Mr. Boehner's politics, but as a person, he and my former boss, Mr. Clyburn, actually got along very well. And I got along well with his chief of staff, and he was really just a nice and pleasant.
Yeah, and these guys, look, I mean, they're part of that generation, that old school republicanism that wanted to get stuff done. And they were part of that team with Newt Gingrich at the time, that balanced the nation's budget. And made reforms in education and welfare. And some can argue about the yin and the yang of all of those policies at the time. But think about it. Have we balanced the nation's budgets? We live on continuing resolutions, America. Our Congress is so inept, it cannot give you a budget.
and won't for the foreseeable future.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you look at these guys and you may want to, cross your eye a little bit at them, and you probably could, but they got stuff done. They got big stuff done. They understood the art of compromise, not the art of the deal, which ain't a deal.
No.
It's for me, being in a room with those two folks was at once hysterical because Boehner loved to smoke and McConnell hated it. And the fight was over where we were going to have a meeting, where we were going to have it on the House side or the Senate side. And it was always funny to watch McConnell get outmaneuvered on where the meeting was going to be. And the moment he could walk in the room, Boehner would light up a cigarette. I'd just fall out laughing. But you had that, but then you also had the sort of the serious effort to deal with big issues like healthcare. And you could see the weakening of the system on the battle over healthcare in 2010.
Over healthcare.
And the fights inside the party. We had 14 doctors in the House at the time,
wow.
Jamie, and we could not put up a counter healthcare plan. And I used to speak. I was like, what the hell? We have 14. You mean our 14 dollars? First off, Obamacare is the Republican healthcare plan from the 1990s.
Yeah,
it was the Heritage Plan, right? Mitt Romney used it
in Massachusetts. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And yet we could not articulate a cohesive plan, and that to me it was the beginning of what we see now. So
wheels fell off.
Yeah.
I want you to put your Nostradamus hat on. 2028.
Yep.
What do you think is, and that is, hopefully we have an election in 2028. What's the Democratic dream ticket?
That's hard to speak to today, largely because I would never put someone like Gavin Newsom in play, but now you have to consider him the way he sort of galvanized things. So if he keeps that momentum going, that changes dynamically what happens. You and I both know someone will emerge who no one's talking about or thinking about right now. That's invariably going to happen. It's not going to be necessarily, the Joshes or the Wesses or the Pritzkers or people like that. Someone's going to emerge. And I think you'll begin to get an inkling of that going into next year. After the 26th election, you'll start to see that. I think the Democrats will have you guys are going to have to settle on a couple of things. And one is dealing with your more progressive wing relative to where the country is. This was the problem that we had in the Republican Party. And I remember telling Tim Kaine and Tom Perez, your predecessors, Donna Brazile and I have talked about this a number of times, that the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street emerged at the same time, the progressive left and the progressive right. Occupy Wall Street fell apart. Tea Party solidified, cracked, morphed into something else. By 2012, 2014, it had largely gone away, but its remnants had begun to seed themselves that would eventually merge 4 years later into Trumpism.
Is MAGA, yeah.
Into MAGA. I see that same kind of evolutionary trend line on the left. How you negotiate and work with that, because the country, where the country is not where MAGA thinks it is or where progressives thinks it should be. Yeah. And you've got to accept the country. The country will tell you where it is and where it wants to go. And the political leadership, in answer to your 28 question, has to be able to speak to that. It has to be able to look the country in the eye and go, I hear you. Yep, I see. That's what it's like for you every day. I get it. And so these are the things I propose we do to make it better. These are the things I propose we do to avoid the going off the cliff. These are the things I propose we do in order to allow you to access the American dream. You've got to speak to the immigrant community. You've got to speak to white America in the middle of the country. You got to speak to suburban women who stop voting for Democrats. No matter how much you think you're going to election with a Hillary Clinton, or how many women get on a call for Kamala Harris, they still voted for Donald Trump.
Yep.
And you've got to unpack that. You've got to understand it, and your candidates need to understand why white suburban women won't vote for a Democrat.
It's a big question.
It's a big question.
It is a big question.
And you got to be honest about the answer. I don't put a lot of stock into Hispanic men and black men are becoming Republican. Nah, it's just, Donald Trump sort of beating his breast and pretending. At the end of the day, what they're going to find, that the jobs aren't there. Their families are being taken from them. Their kids are unhealthy. All those things will come to matter. And so this whole bro culture thing is a phenom for sure, but there are some underlying aspects of that for these young men that also needs to be addressed. And that is what their future looks like, what their opportunities look like. Are they also a part of this American story the way America wants everybody else to be? Donald Trump can't answer that question. He won't answer that question because Donald Trump himself has not settled on that question. Donald Trump is living in the 1950s, for God's sake. How the hell is a man who lives in the 1950s going to help a 25-year-old in 2026, 2027, 2028, right?
That's exactly right.
So it's those are the pieces I think Democrats can begin to crack and the message around in a strong way with clarity. You can take us out of this fog. You can guide the ship of state through this fog and get it to a safe harbor. But it's going to take some work.
Well, in the end of the day, I think everybody wants to be seen, heard, and valued. And
not complicated, Jamie. Not complicated.
Yeah, it's not complicated at all. It's not complicated at all. Now, one of the things that we do on this podcast, it is a legacy of my grandfather. We give an award out called the Sit Your Ass Down Award. Now, I'm sure you have heard that phrase once or twice in your life.
Yes.
So I want you to think, Michael, of all the people involved in the body politic right now, who would you provide the Sit Your Ass Down award to? Who's the best recipient this week?
Wow. Damn, that's a good question, Jamie. I love that. I think probably Pete Hegseth.
Pete Hegseth.
I mean, the whole renaming. I watched him with the renaming of the War Department. Mr. President, we're going to be military of this. Sit your ass down, dude. You were barely a good talk show host. Stop it. Sit your ass down.
And when he sits down, he might have a few drinks. Maybe that's not a good award for him.
Well, stand your ass up, face the corner. No,
get in the corner.
But I just, there's so many folks who are just ripe for that award. But when I look back on last week and all of this noise, it's so unnecessary. It's stupid. It's just playing. It's playing to Donald Trump's ego crazy, and so just sit down. Just stop it. Just stop.
Last thing, I'm gonna shoot some names at you, and you just give me one word that comes to mind.
Sure.
Some of these people.
This could be dangerous, but okay.
I know. That's why I put this here, because I knew I would have fun with you on this. J.D. Vance.
Phony.
Mike Johnson.
Dangerous.
Chuck Schumer.
I have respect for the man, but I guess it's more than one word. Time has come and gone.
Zohran Mamdani.
Not as dangerous as you think.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Crazy as hell.
Wes Moore.
Good man.
Kamala Harris.
Honest broker. She told the truth to the country, and they didn't want to hear it.
So true. RFK Jr.
Incompetent. Incompetent.
Pam Bondi.
Sycophant.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Compromat.
Stephen Miller.
I'll just say 1933.
And that says a lot. Folks, let me tell you, I have so enjoyed having at our table the one and the only Mr. Chairman, my brother from another political mother, Mr. Michael Steele.
Now,
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, it was my pleasure. I appreciate the conversation. It was good. It was fun, as it has always been when we've gotten together. Two boys with roots in South Carolina going, and if y'all know what that means, y'all know what that means.
You got that right. Well, there's a lot of bless their hearts that we could issue.
Bless their hearts.
If you enjoyed today's show, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or anywhere that you find your podcasts. To be the first to know who will be at our table next, find us at ourtablepodcast.com. At Our Table with Jamie Harrison is a production of Vision Blue Media. Our founding executive producers are Jason Hayter and Jamie Harrison. Our producers are Kyle Kelly and Emily Harrell. Our content consultants are Ernie Grigg and Clay Middleton. Our digital communications are led by Celie Riccio. Neil Rossini of FWRV LLP provides production legal. Title sequence by Tom Hunt. Our theme song, Blonde Gone, is written by Dewey and published by Alibi Music Library. We recorded this episode at As Told by Studio in Columbia, South Carolina. Very special thanks to Michael Steele and his team. I'm Jamie Harrison, and I look forward to another conversation at our table.